Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Say Report. And Dale Decker has been saying it for years now, but today is the day where these 5 words will never be truer. We live in a post-Fortnite world.
She's been
That's
saying we live in a
6.
post-Fortnite world for years.
Yeah, she's been saying that for years.
Yeah, ever since she was a kid. It was
Ever,
weird. We didn't know what she was
we didn't
talking
know
about.
what she was talking about.
We didn't know
I
she was
thought it
so
was
prophetic.
just a Gettysburg Address reference. But yeah, Dale, we live in a post-Fortnite world, which is 6 words. That was off the cuff, the whole, like, these words, numbers. And
Honestly, wasn't counting dead.
I was, though. And that's the show. Siegen Sarowick, my host companion, he doesn't care about counting. And Devin Decker,
I don't care
who I
about that.
am, I care
hate
too
Sesame
much. Do you ever like vampire fiction? Did you ever read in vampire fiction that like they had that affinity for counting things?
Yeah,
Like
man, you gotta drop some pips.
I've never gotten that.
You've never heard that or never understood it.
I've never understood it. There's a lot of things in vampire fiction that make all of the sense in the world to me, like why crosses are like deadly to them and why they don't show up in mirrors and all of that. I understand the real world applications of almost everything except for the fact that they are OCD.
Yeah, the weird fact that they're a little OCD, they're a little, yeah, I don't know. Definitely 96 pips, definitely. I'm not quite sure where it comes from. I'm not sure how, let's put it this way. I don't know how well founded that particular part of the lore is. I don't think it's in Bram Stoker's. I might be wrong, but I'm pretty sure that that's not something that comes up there. It feels honestly like an offhanded joke that like Guillermo del Toro made once, and now everybody takes it as real.
Okay, well, the
Like,
fact of the matter is, here is the chicken and the egg scenario, because you have the Count of Sesame Street, and
right.
either he could just love counting because wouldn't it be hilarious if the Count, like, counted?
Counted.
like,
Yep, right.
like
Yeah.
I could totally see, like, television, children's workshop being, like, great idea for a character. But I don't know if they thought of that because it's like, isn't it weird that vampires count? And they're like, oh my god, it could totally work. What a congruence. Because the first time that I saw it outside of Sesame Street was in an R.L. Stein book, How to Be a Vampire, I think. It's over here. I can see it, but I can't. It's too far away for me to read the title. But it was
Oh.
a Ghosts of Fear Street, which was like, I want to compete with Goosebumps. I don't get it. So it might not have been R.L. Stein. No, he did, right? Fear Street is also R.L. Stein, right?
Oh man, you're asking the wrong guy. I
Okay.
remember Goosebumps, and I remember that he had the Ghost Hunters one. Like, see, now I can't even remember the name of that series, and I had it before when I started the sentence. But man, my R.L. Stein knowledge is not deep, shall we say?
Okay, but regardless, I have it. It's down here in the say layer where I record, and I look at it, and I looked at it now, and that's one of the reasons why I was thinking like a big part of this is the fact that he has to count everything. Because they try to kill the vampire prime. It also supports that one that if you kill the head vampire, everyone else will return to normal.
Yeah, it like
Um,
fixes everything. Yeah.
So their way to like keep him in line is they dump over a huge thing of marbles, and then he finds himself not being able to resist the urge to count them as well. But then it also does that thing that like the 90s were a weird time for folklore.
Yeah, well, but the thing is I remember it in something a little bit older than the 90s because there's something about dropping pips by the graveyard. Like that's how you stop anybody that may be a vampire from getting you. Like you would drop like, literal seeds, and if they did rise, they'd get stuck counting the pips until morning, and then when the sun rose, they'd still be out there counting and they'd die. Like that is the lore as I know it, as I understand it.
Oh, no, the lore I was going to talk about is that if they wear sunscreen, they're protected from the sunlight.
Outside of Blade, what other movie do we point to for that?
I point to this R.L. Stein Fear Street book,
Okay.
where like that's like the whole end is that, oh yeah, we killed the vampire, so I'm back to normal. But he's not back to normal, Siege. He's just lying, and he's gonna kill his friend later that night and
So
feast
then,
upon his
was
blood.
he the Prime vampire?
No, they just, it's one of those cool things where like they just thought that that would work because they've heard it in fiction. Basically Lost Boys, right?
Yeah.
1987's Lost Boys, which I believe is also where the Pips thing comes from. At least it's, I think it's referenced in it. And then one of the Frog Brothers is like, that's not true. We're the Frog Brothers. I need to watch that whole trilogy again because those are just fun movies. I know that you do your Hollow watching. I'm putting that on my list for Hollow watching 2019.
The second one is the girls' school, right? Isn't that the whole like second story?
No, The Lost Boys 2 is Ty Hilgebrandt, otherwise known as Steve Stifler's little brother in American Pie Bandcamp, and his sister, and she becomes a vampire. I've never seen the third one, so that might be it. But I know that the bigger part of the second one ends with not Corey Feldman Frog brother is a vampire, and Corey Feldman is preparing for him to return to town so that they can have like an all-out battle.
Yeah. Ugh, man, fucking weird.
But
How did we started talking about it?
We started talking about a post-Fortnite world, and because that's really something I wanted to touch on this episode, because now more than ever do we live in a post-Fortnite society, because people who have never touched a video game came up to me to talk about Fortnite today. And the reason is the Fortnite World Cup.
Yeah, that asshole and like everything that happened there, or...
Oh no, what asshole and everything that happened there. That's I was just
I'm going to say his name wrong, but his name is Ziff. It's X. Oh God, it's XXIF, I believe is his name. It might be the other way around. I don't know. There's some confusion because even people at the game were misspelling it and mispronouncing it and all that shit. So I'm not sure, but he was disqualified from a competition earlier this year because they found out he was cheating. And so he was on like a 90-day ban or something like that. And it ended just in time for him to qualify for this. And then like the dude showed up and it was just this huge controversial thing that he was allowed to be there. So there were people there with like anti-Ziff t-shirts on, and like they were booing when he was announced and cheering when he was getting killed. And it was just a shit show because like, from all accounts, this dude is not the most sportsman figure in the world. I mean, like, he got banned for cheating, but the way that he was also being treated was also kind of gross, too. So it was just a gross on all sides situation for a thing in which I believe a 13-year-old ended up winning $3 million.
16-year-old. Kyle Booga, yeah. Booga being his gamer tag. I don't know how to pronounce his last name. I have watched everything that ESPN did to cover this. And that is because Bomani Jones of High Noon, you used to see him a lot on Around the Horn before he got given his own show at Pablo Torre that aired at 12 p.m. every day. Obviously, it's basically Pardon the Interruption, but with like a cowboy noise when they're done with a topic. I mean, I like it because they're very passionate. But Bomani Jones, he asked the question of, is this now a viable career that this 16-year-old won $3 million for playing a video game? Mm-hmm. And, you know, Pablo defended and said, yeah, I think it should be. But Bomani Jones, he made the argument that, like, I don't think it is yet. I don't think that kids should be putting all their eggs in one basket. You know, this kid won $3 million, but he had to win the entire tournament to get $3 million. While there are people in like the NBA who get $3 million for salary and maybe never play a minute of game.
Right.
And Twitter like took to arms to yell at Bomani Jones about his like attitude towards esports and the fact that this is not sports. Let's not call it sports is something else that he said. And I'm like, well, I need to see this. But in the back of my mind the whole time is, if I were one of these Fortnite people, now I am not a Fortnite person, I understand that, though maybe I should be if there's $3 million on the line, if I can be the best in the world. Also, if you lost, you got $50,000. So, I mean, that's nothing to scoff at either.
At what level? Because
you had to be in the World Cup final.
Okay.
Like, so yeah, like it's a pipe dream. Like, if we really wanted to break down the time and effort that went into that $3 million, probably more than other people who make millions of dollars for their sport.
Yeah, yeah. I think where he maybe did himself a disservice in this conversation of sport versus esport and all that is he compared it to basketball, which isn't fair. Basketball is insane. I mean, even people who play basketball think the money involved is astronomically absurd to a point where it's hard to talk about. I think he would have done himself better if he compared it to something like UFC, a relatively new thing that we do consider a sport now, and we do have like regulations around it. I mean, by all accounts, it is a sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it is something that we've had to figure out over the last decade because it wasn't a sport 15 years ago. So we literally have watched it become one before our very eyes, right? And so I think that's a better comparison because you are looking at dudes that are putting their entire life into it and maybe only walking away making 12 grand a year actually playing the sport because they're not.
This is UFC that we're talking, right?
We're talking about UFC.
Okay, I just want to make sure.
So they're like, so they'll get into a fight and they're guaranteed a certain amount of money even if they lose, but that money might only be 2 or 3 grand. And if they're only in 6 fights a year because health reasons, they can't be in more than that. You know, like regulations state this and this, they need breaks and they need to do that. And so like they might only make 13, 14 grand a year playing the sport. Now, if you're even halfway decent, you can at least get a good double figure out of playing MMA. I've actually literally sat down with dudes that make about 50 grand a year playing the sport. And again, they're not top notch. They're not the guys you would even know names of. So like there is a little bit more of a spread. People are making a living off of it. Some of them are not making a great living, but it is what they want to do with their life. And I don't think esports has hit that yet. I think at that point we can maybe start having this conversation. So in a weird sense, like I agree with him. I just think he kind of shot himself in the foot when he started comparing it to something like basketball.
Right. I think the other issue that people were taking, and I think his bigger point, because I saw him respond to people on Twitter, like he clearly dug himself a bit of a hole. Because when you get into that situation where where you say something and then you get flamed on Twitter and then you feel the need to defend yourself, that always sort of indicates something to me. Yeah,
Rule
like
number
you
one
don't
on Twitter,
feed the
don't
trolls.
respond.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But looking at his responses, it seemed like his other point was, I'm not saying don't play video games. I'm just saying don't only play video games. Diversify. And he doesn't see there being a lot of other opportunities if you pour your life into playing a video game for profit or to be a professional gamer and then that not working out for you. Whereas if you do sports, you know, you could become a coach, you can become a broadcaster, or a lot of these kids that are like the NCAA, they get an education too, so they have a fallback plan. But a lot of the talk around this Fortnite thing is, you know, stop going to school and just play video games. This kid made $3 million.
And that is definitely dangerous. But I think that does ignore a lot of the structure that actually is in place with gaming, down to the fact where there are straight up schools giving out scholarships for esports now.
Yes.
You know, it's not many. It's not nearly on the level as it is for like a basketball or anything like that. And again, I think it does it a disservice to look at it compared to a sport the size of basketball or football or even soccer in this country. You know, in the rest of the world, soccer is huge. But you know, here somebody says they're going to school on a soccer scholarship, and you look at them sideways for a second. But it is what it is, right? Like, I think that,
I mean, it's literally cherries to watermelons. You're not wrong.
Right. I think that he has a fundamental misunderstanding of where esports currently are. I don't think people are wrong to call him out on that, but I do think that his point still stands that there's a sense where, like, if you're working out and you're playing basketball and suddenly you're not that good at basketball, well, you've still been working out. You still understand this A, B, and C. So, like, you can apply that to other sports. You can apply that to other careers in a way where we haven't figured that out yet for esports. So I don't think he's wrong at the moment that, like, hey, maybe not everybody quit school to go play esports just yet, because if this bubble bursts bad, like, you're all going to be fucked. I think that's a fair warning. Like, I really do. I just think that to ignore the fact that, like, we're getting there is also equally dangerous.
Yes, you are right. I think that, like I said, I watched the 4 big ESPN representations of Fortnite, which, again, that's what I would look at. Like, that's legitimizing the sport, guys, that ESPN dedicated airtime to this event. I mean, it was at Arthur Ashe Stadium where the World Cup took place. Like, and it was a full stadium of people sitting to watch people play Fortnite. Like, there's a level of, like, Yeah. But I mean, there's also that other level of the reason why it's happening is because it is popular.
Hmm.
Like, you're not seeing that for, I mean, just because I am close to it, a Link to the Past randomizer tournament.
Right,
You're not
right,
you're not seeing it for everything. This is
right.
one
But
game that
you
is
are seeing
printing
it.
money.
You're seeing it for like Dota, which
Mm-hmm.
it is kind of doing that printing money thing, but more in the background. Playing it a little bit more close to the vest. You're not always aware that that sort of stuff is going on around you, but it's happening more often than you think. I don't want to disagree with the idea that like Fortnite is currently still in that risky phase where it might just be a flash in the pan. So like to really throw all your eggs into the Fortnite basket is a bad idea. But there are other sports out there that have been going for a while, and there are people that are making some money, that do this kind of shit. And again, it's not good money, but what sport ever pays its athletes well up front? That's why basketball is such a weird thing to point to, because infamously, it's not like any other sport in the way that it pays even its lowest
Well,
level players.
it's also very odd because like Jeremy Lin crying about how he feels after his like time in the NBA and not knowing where he's going to go at 30. Like the guy is relatively close to our age and he won. He just won the championship and he's like, I don't know what I want to do with my life now because like I feel like I didn't really contribute to this championship that I have a ring for. If I have a son, I pray he doesn't play basketball. So it's like really kind of the wrong day to point at basketball as well.
Yeah,
As like we have a
yeah.
prominent figure saying, I don't know if I like this environment and what it prepared me for.
Yeah. So like it's weird because I applaud him calling out something that needs to be called out, but I don't know, maybe it's the idea that maybe on ESPN is not the place to do it, but then if not there, where, it's an odd situation that I mean, I'm glad we're talking about it. I just wish people were able to have a civil conversation nowadays, but I guess, that's out the
Right. Well, I
window.
mean, that's the other thing is that like it brings up an inherent toxicity about gaming that
Hmm.
I don't think either one of us would be like ashamed to admit exists. Not that either of us engage in it, but I definitely know that I have been involved in some of those situations. I can't speak for you.
I mean, if by involved you mean contributing to, no, I don't think
No,
that
no, no,
I
no,
ever
no, no,
have.
no.
But
I feel
like,
like
yeah, yeah.
crossing the path of.
No, I've been in the line of fire of that sort of shit for sure. I mean, who hasn't? I mean, get online with any amount of strangers and you're gonna run into assholes and jerks and people that take the game too seriously. But that again, that's true of like every other sport,
I,
right? Like yeah, it's so weird because anytime you levy a criticism against video games, you can point at a sport that also deals with that, you know?
Yes. And that's 100%. Yeah, you nailed it. You really nailed it. There's nothing more that I need to say there, except for my favorite take on the whole thing was on Highly Questionable. The oldest competitor in this competition, or one of the oldest competitors in this competition, was 24 years old. Moms, retired fathers, get on Fortnite.
Yeah, right. I mean,
Like I
believe
know.
me, there's Fortnite moms out there already, man.
Oh
Don't
yeah,
worry.
no, I know, but I just really like this like call to arms that came up that like if you are spending money trying to get people to join your pyramid scheme on Facebook, focus that into Fortnite.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Video
dug
games
that.
and sports in general, and it's a weird animal, especially when you're talking about like older players. There's a lot of people out there that would argue that there is an inherent disadvantage after a certain age of playing video games. A lot of Dota players actually deal with this, where they hit a point where their reaction times are just not that fast anymore. And dedicating finding the gusto to dedicate time to a video game gets a little bit harder the older you get. I won't deny that. Like even as somebody that plays them casually, there are times when I'm just like, I have to go do adult stuff right now, and that sucks. I'm not happy that those moments happen, but they happen. I don't know, man.
Yeah, it's your
Esports is fascinating and is going to completely change the landscape of gaming. And I mean this for sports and video games and gambling and everything over the next like 20 years.
funny you should mention gambling in the wake of the Diamond Casino in Grand Theft Auto Online, or just is it just Grand
Yeah.
Theft Online? And What?
what fell apart there? I don't even like I watched that fire and nobody can explain to me how it started.
How that fire started is you, you can gamble with real money,
Yeah.
and you can't gamble in real money in all of the countries because there are the countries that are like, loot boxes are illegal. Why the fuck would we let you do this? Rep Belgium, like seriously.
Yeah. I
But
mean, soon us, to be entirely honest. Like I like it's coming down the line, man.
maybe, I mean, the UK voted on it this weekend, and it did not pass. Legislation on that type of like loot box in-game gambling mechanics did not pass in the UK. In the wake of freaking the Diamond Casino coming to GTO.
It's you got to understand the way that UK law works
Well,
compared to us, though,
yeah,
is that they're going to rewrite that thing 6 times over and vote on it. It'll pass eventually.
yes. I mean, like the UK's got other issues that they're dealing with, namely Trump 2 Electric Boogaloo, but it's just one of those things where, yeah, that fire like happened and has been burning, and it's just like, why did you guys think this was the time to do it?
Oh
And
God,
like
have they ever read the room? Has for in all seriousness, when has Rockstar ever walked into a room, read it the right way, and done what they should have? That's never been like
yeah,
they've
yeah,
never
it's
done that.
true, but it's like, oh, it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh, cool, you guys are just like, let's remove all the pretenses, give us money to gamble, and even if you win, that money just stays in the game. You can't cash out.
Ta-da!
It's been a time for video
Would
games.
you like to play the
Stevie.
game House Always Wins? Because apparently you do. All right. Okay. Man. Yeah, I don't know. It's making me really fearful for what gaming is gonna be because all of these things that we've been looking at in E3, all of these discussions about like the loot box problems, all of these discussions about how games are being like made and played, like I'm looking at some of the bigger games that are coming out soon, even as far out as something like a Destiny 3, which is like, that is as far as I can see right now, that is the furthest thing that we know is coming. Anything beyond Destiny 3 is up in the air as a possibility, but Destiny 3 is like guaranteed. That's the line, right? And like, what does a game like that look like? And everything in between. Borderlands 3 is, I think, that thing that's at the front of the line. What is that even going to look like in just a few months here? You know?
Yeah.
Uh,
Because I was going to try to turn it into something positive, and you and I's experience with Commander Lilith and the fight for Sanctuary in Borderlands 2. But then I started thinking about Borderlands 3 and wondering what's going to change. Because they just released brand new content, brand new compelling content. I was more compelled during the Commander Lilith and the fight for Sanctuary stuff than I was for most of Borderlands 2. I'll admit that. And probably because it was new in a way. Because I had played through
I
half of
think
Borderlands 2
I
when it
also think
came
part of
out.
it is I also think part of it is that it's a really tight, like really good version of Borderlands. Like it gives you, if you had never played anything else, it gives you a really good sense of the world, it gives you a really good sense of the gameplay, it gives you a really good sense of the progression. Like the three like main elements you need to like make a video game. And it gives you all of that in a really nice tight 6 hour package, whereas Borderlands 2 is spread out over 106 hours, right? Like there's a sense of time that I think that goes into those types of games. And you and I have talked about this before. The Borderlands style of like RPG, even online RPG, I wouldn't call it massive multiplayer because it's not massive, right? But the online RPG elements, they're not your jam. That's not the way that you play games. The idea of dedicating 3 hours to a quest to get this very particular type of gun has never been the way that you care about games.
I mean, I beat
As
3 games today.
right,
That's what I
exactly,
like.
right,
I like, and
yeah,
that's
yeah.
true. That's right. Because something like Fight for Sanctuary appeals to what I like in a video game, whereas it's like I could sit down, I could bang this out in a day.
Mhm.
Where that's not, Borderlands was not that. I wanted Borderlands 2 to be that, but eventually playing in that way where I'm just playing the game, I'm not really caring about leveling in any way, shape, or form. I hit a
Leveling or
wall.
looting. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, we were all there for it. It's up online. We saw the video.
Yeah.
Like Yeah, no, we exactly, right. And so what does that world look like if the idea is that gaming nowadays is about pumping extra money and extra time and extra like, and then it becomes really scary when you think about that becoming the sport and that being the thing that everybody's like striving to become. Because let's be honest, a lot of our rules and regulations in this country are dictated by our entertainment
Mm-hmm.
and the things that we want to allow in front of us. If we want to allow this in front of us, we will make way in our laws and legislation to put that thing in front of us. I mean, everything from the kinds of movies we watch to fucking executions. I mean, like this week we saw the federal government returning to for the first time in 16 years, putting people to death because like there is a certain faction that is in power right now that wants to see more of that. And it's just like, that's not, I thought we were past that. I thought after 16 years of not doing this, we had all agreed that we don't do this as a country. But nope, that shit's changing because the people that make those kinds of rules and regulations, that's the kind of shit they want to see in front of them. And I mean, so you start to see this kind of shit and you can understand why people get so passionate on Twitter and get so upset about things like this and will get upset when people call out their bullshit because so much of what we do, and we've talked about this, so much of what we do in video games, in movies, in books, and in comics and shit, ends up dictating what actually happens in the real world.
Wow, that's scary.
Uh huh.
100% true, but scary. It
Yeah.
really is. I mean, like, just look at the fact that now, after 10 o'clock, they can say shit on over the air networks. Like,
Uh huh.
years ago, that never happened. And I still
Hmm.
think it's weird that, like, blah, 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 what the show, I just watched it, Suits, right? Suits now airs at 9 o'clock. It used to air at 10. And the 9 o'clock showing of Suits edits a bunch of words, and then if you watch the midnight replay, those words are in there.
Hmm.
But even further than that, they do a rerun on Sundays at like 8 a.m., and even more language is edited out.
Yeah.
And it's just like
Well,
that's been my litmus test of like what is allowed when on American television.
and so it's going to be really interesting. It's really interesting that you point out that idea that we kind of had a hard and fast rule when understanding like if it's going to be on, it's going to be on TV. Past this time, it can do this. Before this time, it can't. Right? It's going to get really weird when we start thinking about what consuming television and movies is going to be like with streaming services in the future. And we had this exact conversation with Zach the other day about how if you watch something on Hulu, you're going to get TV edits because everything on Hulu is based on what the networks will give you the rights to. Whereas on something like Netflix, you're going to get the rights as they're negotiated by the creators and the artists and the producers. So you're going to get different versions of things on there. And one of the examples that he pointed out was like Futurama and the way that that was kind of put up and presented in one place versus the other, to the point where I just noticed the other day, I'd never thought about this, but because they're the TV edits of Futurama, they are solid 22 and a half minute episodes, which means that the movie versions, which are cut up into episodes, actually take things like jokes out and things like that so that they
Mm-hmm.
fit into that 22 and a half minutes, right? And like it didn't even occur to me until I was watching the other day, and offhanded, not even an offensive joke, just a funny joke just didn't occur. They get swallowed by the Venus flytrap, and then what they do is they cut it open so that the door can still come out. That entire joke removed, not for any offensive reason, literally just cut for time, right? But still not there because Hulu now has the rights to that. Whereas back when it was on Netflix, it, it was like in its entirety, right? And so you start thinking about things like, well, now NBC is going to have its own version of the app. What is that NBC app going to do in terms of what versions of shows it puts up? So, for instance, Parks and Rec, there's two cuts of certain episodes. There's the television cut, and then there's the producer's cut. If that ever moves over to the NBC app, are we going to lose the producer's cut? Are they only going to put the network versions up? And if they're going to put the producers cut up, like how do they present them? And the same thing goes with WB, and they start putting up versions of their movies and television shows depending on what network in the WB network owns that. What version of those movies are we going to get? Because if it's coming off of something like Epics or something like that, it's probably going to be complete unedited. There it is. But if it's coming off of one of the networks that they own, does that mean that we're going to get a television edit of like the Big Lebowski or some shit? Like what is going up on these streaming services is going to be dictated by who owns the rights when they're loaned back to these bigger companies that are running these things, and it's going to dictate the way that we watch all of this stuff.
Along that same line, right? This past Christmas, I went to a wake, and then I went back to the people's house, and they put on Love Actually on demand. And it turned out that it was the TBS version of Love Actually. And I was like instantly disappointed because I'm like, well, it's going to be edited. And that sucks because, you know, I don't want to watch this movie. I own this movie 2-3 times. I'm going to watch it unedited later on because it's what I do. So it just
Right.
kind of sucked to be like, I'm going to have to watch this edited because that's what the people want to do. And it also made sense, right? Like that's how they wanted to feel better after losing a loved one, was like just ensconcing themselves in the sheer ridiculousness of Richard Curtis.
Yeah.
I get it. I
Yeah.
understand. And, you know, so it comes up to what would really be like the moment for me, which is, you know, Martin Freeman as a porn stand-in, which can we believe that Martin Freeman, one of his first roles was as a porn stand-in in Love Actually?
Yeah. Fantastic.
Just talk about that for 2 seconds. But and it happened, and I'm like, I would have never expected that. To like completely unedited, full nudity, and I'm like, cool, way to go, TBS. But then in the back of my mind, I'm like, but what if someone threw this on thing like, oh, it's TBS, so it's probably edited. Then I'm going back even further to Christmas 2005, where it was put on I was at just My Life, Sejin, mylife.com. I was at a Bible study Christmas party. It was not a Christmas party sponsored by the Bible study group, but it was a Christmas party and my friend who was throwing the party invited his Bible study group.
Oh.
But like that was it then. It was me and like 2 other people who like knew him from high school, and then everybody else was this Bible study group. And I'm like, this is going to be fun. Oh, it was a New Year's Eve party. It wasn't a Christmas party. Just like balance. And they're like, oh, Love Actually, that should be fun as background noise. And it made it 13 minutes before they shut it off in disgust. And I'm just like, oh my God. And I'm like, this is more fun than the movie, watching the like disgust wash over this group of people. But to go back to that, TBS, when it says it's TBS, and there was nothing saying that this movie will be shown in its original content or anything like that, just you're watching Love Actually on TBS. There will be commercials. And I'm like, oh, that sucks. But whatever, there'll be commercials. I don't care. But I figured, you know, it's TBS. It's going to be edited because it's edited whenever my father watches it on TBS. And I'm like, you own this movie. Why are you wasting your time? But no, it wasn't. So it is a really weird landscape because in a moment where I was convinced it would be the cable TV edit, it was not. But then in a moment where I'm watching My Name is Earl on Hulu and it's the syndicated version. And I'm like, well, that's strange that that's the package now.
Yeah, I mean it's really bizarre. The reason that I'm even so caught up on this is I think we've talked about this. The family's doing YouTube TV recently.
Yep.
Like that's the big thing that we've kind of really started to explore and try out. And I'm not hating it. I should start with that. I think there's a lot of really good intelligent stuff that YouTube is doing for themselves with it that is going to do really well. But the way that YouTube TV works is they work with networks. Essentially, if you think about it like the way that Hulu works, it's kind of in that vein, except that we have their big thing is that they can do live TV. And so they have movies and they have television shows and they have all this stuff that's based on whatever networks they have contracts with. So anything that they've got in their quote unquote backlog, unlike Hulu, who could have like an entire show, odds are YouTube's only going to have the last like 5 or 6 episodes because it's based entirely on what's aired within the last like 2 weeks. So for instance, DuckTales, because they did like a huge marathon of it a few weeks ago, the entire series is up right now because it aired on TV 2 weeks ago. But if you go to something like Star, same network, you know, like same basic age group, like there's nothing really differentiating it from DuckTales. Like only 5 episodes of it up. They don't have the entire series right now because recently just Disney Channel just hasn't put much Star up. So like that is what's kind of dictating what's available on YouTube TV, and it's also dictating what versions of things that are available, because we're getting weird versions of DuckTales that were not the premiere versions, but were aired at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So the commercial cuts are really bizarre and in like weird places, and like sometimes there's like a couple of seconds of a scene missing, and you can tell because it comes back from commercial and they're like mid sentence, and you're just like, what? And it's because again, it's these weird afternoon cuts where they're trying to show more toy commercials than they are television show. So like that's just the version that's on because that's what was on TV lately. And so it's just made me really think about this stuff, about like one of the problems with this multiple streaming service nonsense, and one of the things that I think, despite how fanboyish and stupid this is going to sound, I think elevates Netflix kind of above in this argument, is that we're dealing so much with content by the people that own it, spoon feeding it to us in the way that they want to feed it to us. Whereas like something like Netflix is just like, we're paying you for this and we're putting it up. We have no stake in editing it in any way. We have no stake in not offering it in the way that fans want it. All of it is built up into, we're going to put TV up in a way that is going to be given to the people the way they want to consume it, that these other streaming services have yet to show me they want to do that. And I mean that even Hulu to that point, you know?
Yeah. And that's, I mean, Hulu should be TV like redefined. I don't think that's not their logo, but it should be, and it's weird that it's not.
And it used to be. That's the killer, you know, like now I'm the old man yelling at clouds, but like that was the big thing about Hulu when it first started. And even though there were commercials on it back then, like the idea was, look, this is something that fans want. They want to be able to access the entirety of a TV show. They want to be able to watch not just this week's, but the last few weeks so they can get caught up. Like that was the definite mentality when Hulu started. And to see them kind of shed that over the last couple of years because they're trying to get more content, and in order to do that, that means they have to watch themselves a little bit more with what they do with that content, you know.
Agreed.
Yeah.
It's it's strange is the thing. And then also let's just add into the mix Amazon Prime, who like really took a dump on my chest. That's the way that I can say it. That's not true, but it's not literal. I mean, it's figurative.
I feel like that every time I look at their UI. So I mean, what did they do this time?
So as hopefully everybody knows, a new Charlie's Angels film is coming out later this year, starring Kristen Stewart and Elizabeth Banks and Naomi Scott.
And is it full on film? I didn't know if it was a film or a series that they were working on.
It's a film. It is a film.
Awesome. That's awesome.
The real awesome thing is that like multiple Bosleys, and that's what really makes me happy. Is
because they couldn't get Bernie Mac back, so they do what?
So it looks like so far, based purely on what I've seen in the trailer, Patrick Stewart is a Bosley.
Nice.
Jimon Hansu, only because I took the time to learn how to say his name, but also he's in the movie as a Bosley, and then Elizabeth Banks is portraying Bosley as well. So nice. It's just very interesting to me that they're taking that aspect of it and slamming it into the show, which feels 100% from the two movies in the 2000s.
Yeah,
that they like switched up the Bosley. So it's like maybe Bosley doesn't always have to be the same person. Maybe it's whoever Charlie can like rope into the role this week.
Yeah. Evil Bosley. Awesome. No, I'm that sounds really cool.
So I'm excited about that. But because we're talking about Charlie's Angels, your brother Zach brought up the forgotten 2011 series, and I'm like, yep. I loved that series. What are you talking about forgotten? Because in my head, that aired at like 1 a.m. Like, oh my god! Like as I like peeled back the layers of my memory, I'm like, oh no, you're an idiot, Devin. I thought it was like just a syndicated show that ABC was running at 1 a.m., sort of like how Baywatch or Baywatch Nights worked.
Right.
But no, like maybe it's a Canadian production. Maybe I'm an idiot. No, it was an ABC production. They were running and just had no. After 4 episodes, they're like, we're showing it, but we're showing it at 1 a.m. on a Sunday morning.
We filmed it. We got to put it on somewhere.
And even then, they didn't even show the 8th episode. But first of all, one crazy thing, because I was trying to figure out why it was canceled, because I really enjoyed it. Like, as rewatching it, I'm like, I really like this show, and it came down to me that it was really Bosley heavy, because like 3 episodes, the A plot was Bosley related, which seems odd in a Charlie's Angels show.
Yeah, that's putting it lightly. Seems a little lopsided for some reason. All
Yes.
right.
But then I went out to do the research, and after 4 episodes, they decided to cancel this show. And those 4 episodes was one that featured Abby as the main like story driver, one that featured Katie Prince as the main story driver, and one that featured Eve as the main story driver, and then one that featured Bosley, right? So I'm like, in terms of storytelling, this is a good way for the first season of a television show to make you care about the characters.
Right, right.
But after that 4th one, which was a Bosley heavy episode, they're like, no, we're canceling it, but we'll still show it. But the reason why that is because the episode that aired second is the one that Amazon, for some reason, had as the 5th episode. For some reason.
Oh, so they had them up in a different order.
They had it up in a different order, which again, didn't really care about. I'm like, it's fine. I'm still going to watch this show. I'm enjoying it. But I watched 6 episodes on Amazon Prime, and I'm like, all right, time to finish up Charlie's Angels, right? It's the weekend. I want to be done with this. I want to say that I enjoyed it again. I want to like finish up my Bosley theory. And then I go to Amazon Prime, and it's gone. It's just gone from Amazon Prime. And I'm like, oh, that's disappointing. But then I see Watch Free with Crackle. And I'm like, so what changed in the literal 3 days since I started watching this show that Crackle was like, we need Charlie's Angels stat?
It's your watching. That's what changed. They're like, shit, somebody's actually watching this. No. We can't have that.
So, yeah, that's what it felt like. It really felt like Big Brother's like, all right, we're going to put this on Crackle because we have a viewer.
Yeah, well, I mean, the biggest perpetrator of that particular issue is definitely Firefly. When it was put on Netflix the first time, it was put on in order of the DVD. And I believe the DVDs were in air order when they first came out. So like they did their thing, they went through to the producers, and then at some point the producers changed the airing order, or changed the DVD order so that the pilot would be first. The pilot had always been this thing that had meant to be first, but had gotten pushed back, and Fox notoriously it was the last thing they ever put on. So way to go, Fox! Your 2-hour premiere of a television show that introduces you to the characters and makes you give a shit, you decided to bury that mid-season, idiots. So anyway, so it changed on the DVDs at some point. So for a while people were like petitioning Netflix to like fix it, and then they did, and then Hulu got it and it was different again, and it was like this whole thing for like nerds to like ping pong back and forth about how good a service was, based on whether or not it had the episodes of Firefly in the right order.
I will forever be against Netflix and sliders because for some reason the atomic bomb episode and the Earth where like women are the dominant species just did not show up on Netflix. And I cannot find an explanation as to why those 2 episodes were like omitted from the package.
That's
it just
very
always
bizarre.
felt so strange to me. I'm like, these are 2 of the episodes that got me watching sliders.
Do you know if there was any weird unlicensable music inherent to either of those?
Maybe. I mean, I have the DVDs. I'd have to dig them out and double check
Yeah.
it. But
Yeah.
like, usually if it's a music issue, that's like front and friggin' center when you like jump on Wikipedia. Because I've always been curious why I can't watch Ed anywhere. God, I love Ed.
Yeah.
And the fact that it's always like, it's a music issue, and the fact that 2 production companies own stake in Ed. And they can't figure it out, and they also don't want to pay for licensing music. Yeah. And I don't know if you were one of those poor sods who bought the complete series of Daria for $15 at Walmart, but without the music, Daria kind of sucked.
Yeah, it's really weird trying to watch Daria now in retrospect, and a lot of the music being changed or altered, because I mean like you're pointing out, the whole point of that show, right? The same goes for Buffy. Kind of falls into that every now and then. Not they did some really smart moves with the music there, but any like Warner Brothers or WB or CW show from like the mid 2000s kind of runs into that problem because it became such a big thing to get the hottest single on there that they were making all of these like fucking deals with record labels, and record labels are notorious with their fucking contracts. Even with radio play, never mind licensing them out for a TV show. I mean, video games. I'm never going to get to play a proper Tony Hawk remake ever again, right? Because they're fuck that noise. Man.
Because I want to hear Seed when I'm playing Thug. It just makes it feel like Thug.
I mean, I do want to point out a couple of like really kind of like bright spots in this whole like nonsense, though. This idea of rights and when people own them, what they're able to actually do with them, and some of the good stuff that can actually happen. Because there was a couple of things this week that really kind of surprised me. First and foremost, I don't know if you knew about nor care about the dropping of Veronica Mars like a whole month early.
Oh, is it out? Is it available?
Yeah, so it was supposed to come out. It might have not been a whole month. I think it might have only been like a week or two. But nevertheless, Hulu surprised everybody, dropping Veronica Mars. And to take this for what it will, they're a big company. Clearly, they're doing this for the money. But it was rather cute of them. They dropped it on Kristen Bell's birthday. Like the whole joke was that it was like a surprise for her birthday. They got on Twitter and were like, "Happy birthday, Kristen! We put your show out early." Like, and so that was when it dropped, and it was like this huge thing that everybody lost their shit about. And that's really cool. Like when a company can do that kind of stuff because they have that kind of control, because they own the rights in the way that they do, and they're allowed to do that. So like. There is a way in which companies can take advantage of this and do right by their fans. And I think that's the part that we've all got to like latch onto is like, yeah, at the end of the day, we're all selling our souls to all of these companies. But if they can do right by the fans with that power, you know, that's key. With great power comes great responsibility, right? Because the other one that I'm thinking of is the DC Universe release date for Hush, the big animated release that they're doing this month. They actually were able to move it up a whole month because they were able to just surprise everybody. It actually came out digitally like yesterday, and it wasn't supposed to be for like a few weeks. And on top of that, it's going to hit stores like early, and they're going to be able to get it onto the DC Universe app early and stuff like that. And it's just this huge surprise for everybody. Now, the cynic in me is curious if maybe they're feeling like it didn't come out as well, so they just want to rush it out. So I've got to see it for myself. I can't stand by whether or not it's a good release, but it is something that I have been looking forward to, and I know a lot of people have been talking about. It legitimately might get me back onto the DC Universe app after my hard experience the first time around.
I feel like that's probably the thing. It's to draw people in, especially if it's dropping close to when Swamp Thing ends. Because I know for a fact I haven't touched Swamp Thing, but once that final episode is there, I'm going to Doom Patrol the hell out of it.
Yeah. Well, and I'll be interested to see what you think about it because, like, by all accounts, again, I haven't watched it myself. I'm going to do the exact same thing you're talking about. But by all accounts, it's a phenomenal show. But it did lead to a little bit of a weird gap in some content with it ending sooner than they planned because, you know, originally it was supposed to go for another 3 weeks.
3 episodes, yeah.
So there was a little bit of a gap suddenly in their release schedule. So that is clearly what they're trying to fill with the release of the new animated Batman movie and them pushing so much about like Harley at Comic-Con and stuff like that. Like they want you to know, like, no, there's stuff still coming. But again, if they can wield that evil power for fans alike, you know, like let them.
That'd be lovely. I mean, that's the problem is we don't see that near enough.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really where the issue comes from. Like, for example, while we're shining a light on good things, Tuca and Birdie being canceled after one season, which seems strange.
It's strange. It is strange until you sit back and you look at the landscape of what that style of animated like show really is, right? Mm-hmm. Tuca and Birdie I equate to something on the level of, you know, Adult Swim is an easy one to take a swipe at, but also the other thing is the Fox animation box thing that they did where like they would put really kind of bizarre shows like Golan and the one that I really loved that came out of Fox was actually Stonequackers is amazing, yeah. But Lucas Brothers Moving Company I believe was from that. Yep. Whole thing, right? And so look at all of those shows that I just mentioned. They're all one season shows. They don't go past past one season. They're weird, they're bizarre, they catch people's attention, and people talk about them from here to the rest of eternity. But they also don't overstay their welcome. They don't ever run the risk of overstaying their welcome because they're only ever around for one season. So like Adult Swim notoriously will run something into the ground because it'll make them money, and they're very open about that. They're like, fuck no, we're not going to cancel this, everybody's watching it, why would we cancel this? Look at Aqua Teen, which went through fucking like what, three iterations, right? Yeah, before they finally canceled it, right?
Look at Robot Chicken, honestly. When's the last time you watched Robot Chicken? And they still do new episodes, apparently.
Right, exactly. So like Adult Swim won't fucking stop to the point where we've all now forgotten about it and we can't move on. And Netflix doesn't want to play in that space. They don't want to be they don't that's just not what they want to do. Because you point to Tuca and Birdie, I point to Big Mouth, where they turned around and they actually extended that show's contract for 3 whole years.
Yeah.
So like yeah, it sucks. Like I get it. I understand why people are getting really upset about the Tuca and Birdie stuff. And in terms of ideas of like representation, it's once again Netflix kind of putting their foot in their mouth, being so open about how loving they're going to be about representing all these different peoples and diverse backgrounds. And then the show that they cancel is one of the few animated comedy shows being run by both women and diverse women. Like it's not a good look. I'm not going to argue that at all. It's just that when you think about it,
especially when you then followed up with we brought back Big Mouth for 3, and that's kind of the polar opposite. But continue.
It is and it isn't. I mean, like, you do have a lot of really good representation on that show. It's the only sex positive cartoon show, like cartoon Family Guy style show you can think of, because like nothing that in the McFarlane, and I'm not even blaming him for this, I'm just calling it this, but nothing in the Seth MacFarlane verse like is what one would call necessarily sex positive. There's a lot of really weird stuff that gets put on those shows that you're just like, yeah, they're showing BDSM, but they're showing it in a really like uncomfortable and not accurate light to make light of it. Whereas like Big Mouth's whole like purpose is this, right? And they do have very diverse characters on there. I mean, you've got an entire episode dedicated to period like knowledge and stuff that goes on with that I know was like celebrated when it came out, because people felt like this is the first time where you have women, dudes alike, like talking about this in a very real way, in a very honest way, and a very like fair way. Like and so it is a pretty celebrated show in a lot of ways. And so you should be like we should acknowledge that Netflix is not abandoning everything. It's just cutting the stuff that like it needs to cut, because it's either A, not doing well to begin with, or B, they're smart enough to know it's not going to do well in the future. Now, who are they to make that call is definitely a fair question, but like,
well, they're the people giving them money.
Exactly.
That's, I mean, they're unfortunately the big problem with, not even the problem, just the fact of the matter is the fact that it is their money, so they get to support whatever they're going to support. So and you can't fault them for that in any way, shape, or form.
But you want to get shitty about a show that they renewed for some reason, and this is as somebody that has watched through it like 10, 12 times, is I can't believe that they gave Paradise PD another season, but that is getting another season. Now you want to talk about how they could have saved some money for maybe Tuca and Birdie for another season. They could have not necessarily given that show. Like, first of all, that show tells a full comprehensive story in one season. I don't know if you've even watched a lick of it.
No, I'm familiar with it though.
But it does tell an overarching season story that ends on the finale and wraps up fine. Like, so in one way, the story that they were even telling is done. So why do we need another season of it? In another way, it's also, I get it. As somebody, again, that watches the show and rewatches the show, I don't need more episodes of it. The episodes that are there are just fine. So, like, why does that show get renewed when a show like Tuca and Birdie gets canceled? Those are the questions I want to hear asked. But
also, since we're talking Netflix, I did watch all of Mr. Iglesias.
Oh, okay.
I don't need that show to get a second season. Okay. And like it's a very good show in terms of representation and all of that. But it was a weird 10 episodes of TV of them like feeling like every episode we don't really know what we want to be.
Yeah, still trying to figure out if they want to be that after school special episode, if they want to be like Last Man Standing, like
if they want to be the Steve Harvey show, if they want to be Nick whatever certified teacher, if they want to be Mr. Robinson, Craig Robinson's style TV show. Yeah, like it's just very AP Bio. Like, there's an AP Bio-esque episode. Like, it's very. I don't know. I mean, I ended up enjoying my time with it, but I don't need to go back to it anytime soon.
Exactly,
And
right?
that's one of those things where I get, and even I like Tuca and Birdie. I never watched it, but I will say this: the cancellation and the ensuing outroar or outrage at it does make me interested in going to check it out. And I mean, for those creators, is that good too? That like people are now going and watching your show? I know it's very strange. It's not like, and that's the thing though, is that like with a thing like Netflix, I'm more prone to do that if a show goes away. Yeah. Where on TV, if they cancel it and there's other episodes that haven't aired, unless I'm 100% committed, I'm probably not going to watch those other episodes.
Yeah.
Because why would I want to schedule my life to incorporate something that the network doesn't even really stand for?
Right.
Also, while we're talking about TV, you watched all of Leverage, right? Have you watched all 5 seasons?
Yeah, man. I fucking love that show.
So I recently came to it during my flu, episodes. Nice. And I need to ask, because I just finished season 4, and holy fuck.
Yeah.
Is that just so good. Incredibly good. But it feels like that was their time to end it, especially with how the Last Damn Job is structured as a television show.
Yeah.
Is the 5th season worth it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The thing about Leverage is that Leverage was the perfect 3:00 in the afternoon show on like a Saturday where they would like maybe put 3 episodes on a row on. Like it is that level of entertainment for me. And I think we've talked about this before. So like I don't think it runs the risk of losing any like artistic merit with me, because it didn't have a lot of stock in that to begin with.
Oh,
you know what I
have
mean?
So much stock in that.
That's
why I love the show.
And like I love those shows, and I love the structure of it. I mean, come on, man! Like it's Ocean's 11 with like a family that I got to know and love over the 5 years that I was watching that show, right? So like I get it, and I was wholly invested in it, and I love the 5th season. I think I can't knock the way that it ends. For me, like there's some beautiful stuff that happens in the finale of that show that it was totally worth whatever like upswing feeling I had to get, But like you're pointing that out, and I was just thinking, I feel that every season of Shield, every time I come back from a finale of Shield, I'm just like, oh, do I have it in me to go again? Like that ending was just so perfect, and they bring me back every time.
Season 6 is incredible. I have 5 episodes left, but season 6 so far has been incredible.
Right. Like season 5 was a hell of a finale for that show. Yeah. Right. Like, yeah.
It was that's why I was so convinced that it was going to be the end of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. forever.
Yeah. To be fair, they did too, which is why it ended that way.
Right. And yes, so you have like an Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. where, we got picked up for an additional season, even though we kind of did our swan song episode. That felt like I moved the G. Sorry. And I just was nervous that Leverage, like it felt like we completed this story and then, but we're giving you a 5th season. So I just was curious if it was merited. Cause like
it does the Whedon-esque thing where it almost becomes a different show. Like, I don't know if you ever. I don't know how much of any.
I mean, Dollhouse jumps to mind immediately when you say that.
When it becomes a different show in its next season, yeah. Well, so there is that kind of aspect to it where like you kind of wonder the whole time, if I didn't have the grounding of 4 seasons before this, would I care about this? But I don't care. I care about this. Like that's where I land.
Okay. I mean, that's really what I wanted to do, because I think of my big cautionary tale is that How I Met Your Mother went on for 8 seasons too long.
Yep.
Yeah, just I mean I enjoyed that first season immensely, and then it just kept coming, and I slowly stopped caring.
I mean, I've always stood by the fact that Lost should have only been 3 seasons. Like it was a fantastic 3-season show, and the fact that they had to spread it out, you can look at straight up 3 or 4 episode arcs in Lost and be like, that wasn't just a filler episode, that was a filler arc. That arc ended up meaning nothing to the larger picture, which is just horrendous writing as far as I'm
I
concerned.
like that you say it could have been 3 seasons. Now, you don't mean the first 3 seasons, right? You mean if you
Well,
took everything and cut it
if you took all of
into...
the important, yeah, that's what I
Okay,
mean. Is if
okay,
you
I
took
just
all
want
of
to...
the important stuff out of it, that's what I'm saying. Is there's so much filler when you didn't need it. Like you could have just gotten to the good stuff. Like I think the finale, despite whatever people might feel about the finale of that show, I actually think it's a really good one. So like I think that's a really good finale. I think it had a really strong start. I think it had a lot of really strong ups in the middle of that series. But you did not need to sit around for it for what was it on the air for like 8 years.
6. It was only
Six.
6 years. You and your
Well,
brother
it was
keep
six
adding
seasons.
years to
It was six
Lost.
seasons, but that doesn't mean that it was only 6 years, dude.
That's true.
So
That's very true. But your brother, like, Lost ran for 12? No, Zach, it didn't. Stop saying that it did.
yeah, but like whatever like amount of time, because wasn't the writer's strike in the middle of
The
Lost?
writer's strike, and that's my favorite season of Lost. That's why I was curious about, like, because if I had to keep 3 seasons of Lost, and like, it would be 4, 5, and 6. Because those were the seasons of Lost that I actually watched. Because that 4th season, the fact that it's only 13 episodes long meant that every episode something important happened.
Exactly. Right? Imagine if that had been the style of that show. Like, oh man, yeah. Anyway, TV guys had a chance to take a swing at like entertaining us and doing it artistically, and there was a long time for where they did, and then that died. So streaming services get their chance now, and they're gonna fuck it up,
Yeah, well,
just like the TV guys
they
fucked it up.
have to. It's part of the circle of life, man. It's
Yeah.
the circle of entertainment. All right, so we're at time, but I'd like to do 3 things. May I be allowed to do 3 things? I've kind
Here we
of
go.
commanded this whole episode. First of all, I learned the Die Hard for NES speedrun last week. It's incredible. It's just the most incredible. You don't do anything from Die Hard.
Is it not get off the plane? Is it just sit on the plane?
No, oh god, it's not. The best speedrun game ever is Caesar's Palace for the NES, because it starts, you exit the hotel and you get a victory screen. Like, the only way to win is not to play. But no, in Die Hard, like, I didn't do anything from the movie. The speedrun is you go and you hurt your feet, so it takes more time when you go up and down stairs.
Excuse me, he hurts his feet in the movie, Devin.
No, I understand that. But he doesn't hurt his feet in the first minute of the movie. Like, that's at minute 62. That's like, shoot the glass. He's not wearing no shoes. I know that, Lester. Sorry.
Oh.
So yeah, so like within the first minute you go up, you yourself shoot the glass, and then you run around in it until he's like limping along, your little sprite of John McClane. And then you go up and down the stairs, and because he's limping, there's like an in-game timer that's attached to the locks of the vault. Like, it's actually a really well-built game. I can't believe I'm saying that. But you wait until the first 2 locks of the vault have been opened, and then the guy with the detonator spawns on the lowest floor you can access. You kill him, you get the detonators, you run up to the top floor, you kill a guy there, you get a key to the roof, and if you open the door right to the left of the roof access door, you get a bit of C4, and then you place the C4 and you run to the edge of like the roof area where he, does the stupid fireman jump. With the fire hose. And then it's like, congratulations, you won the game. And I'm like, I didn't do anything. But it was just so much fun to learn.
Wow.
That
is bizarre.
It's just like this bizarre thing where like I watched it be done because the ESA was last week, and the guy's like, I'm gonna beat this in 5 minutes, and he ended up doing it in 4 minutes and 32. I'm not there yet, but I can beat that game in like 10 minutes.
Awesome.
And it's just, oh my god, this is fun. The second thing that I'd like to do is, I'm mad at you. Officially mad at you because I said it on the Say report.
Wait until the end of the episode for this, okay?
Because you're like, play Oracles of Ages and Oracles of Seasons.
Yeah.
And the reason why, first of all, Oracle of Ages, much better game than I recall. Yeah. My memory with that game is I got stuck in the second dungeon because It is the first time, literally, in all of Zelda where you can push pots, and pushing a pot is how you solve a puzzle. There's no indicator that you can push pots in the game. The prior Game Boy Advance game is a lot of picking up pots, not pushing them. So, like, it was just one of those things where I legitimately had to buy the strategy guide because it was still in the halcyon days of the internet. And I'm like, oh, I can push pots. This was a waste of money.
This is a whole waste of money.
But playing it again as someone who's beaten the Zelda games, I'm having fun with it. But then I remembered the other issue that I have with these games is the mini games galore.
Yeah.
And today I got to the one that's like a sound mini game, and I don't play video games with sound anymore. So I'm like, oh, I need to find headphones. I'm mad at Siegen.
Yeah, I love those games though, and I actually didn't touch them until they got re-released on the 3DS when they did that big like re-release of Oracles. Yeah, man, I don't know. There's something really nice and compact and tight about those games, and you were looking for some quick wins for your list, and I figured they were Zelda, they were quick, they were right up your alley.
Yeah, and I mean, but it brings me back to 8th grade where I bought Ages and my friend Jimmy Arico bought Seasons, and we raced each other to see who could finish first. And obviously he did, because there's no pot pushing puzzle in Oracle of Seasons.
Awesome.
So yeah, so thank you for that. And the final thing, it's been 2 years since we've done this, but Devin Decker, Resident Evil 4 update minute. Last thing I did was beat the fish. I haven't done anything since I beat the fish.
And then today?
No, I didn't even touch it today. I just was like, oh, I remember I was playing this game 2 years ago. Nope, still at the fish.
Still haven't moved fast.
I beat the fish.
Good update, Dev.
I beat Resident Evil 2 remake. So like that's something.
That's my update on my Resident Evil 4 playing. I beat the Resident Evil 2 remake.
I just thought that I'm like I should update the fact that it's still in my PlayStation 4. If I turned it on right now, I'd be playing Resident Evil 4, but I'd still be at that fish and like, I beat the fish.
I feel like I've won what I needed to.
Thanks
for the update, Ollie.
Small victory. You're welcome. Okay. So, anything from you before we finish this one up?
Man, I just a lot of stuff going on right now. We're have I told you that I've been rewatching Shield? Actually, I'm actually in the middle of a rewatch.
You gave a very nice little reference to it, but I didn't know that you were rewatching it.
I've been meaning to talk about it, but I think honestly I've been waiting because we have been flying through it. We started the rewatch in February, and we're about to finish season 5. And I don't know what we're going to do about season 6 because it's not available in its entirety anywhere. So I might legitimately have to buy it, and I don't care about that. That'll happen if I have to. I'm just trying to figure out what other options there are. But anyway, been rewatching that show and realizing stuff is in my rewatch that has been quite enjoyable, and I've got some new opinions and thoughts on it. But I do want to wait until I'm kind of more caught up before I get too deep into it. But honestly, that's part of why I don't have too much else going on, because between that and Mario Maker, I haven't been doing much else.
Oh, I love your Mario Maker stuff, by the way.
Yeah.
Thank you. I just want to say here, every clear of Super Meat Toad is me.
I'm excited. I got to go take a look at it. I haven't looked at that one since I posted it.
I don't know. There were 8 clears last night, maybe 7 or 8 clears.
Does it count a different clear every time you clear it?
Every time you clear it, because that's the thing. Because there was just the one clear, and I beat it as Toad. And I'm like, well, I want to beat it as Toadette too. It only seems fair. And then after I did that, there were 2 clears, and I'm like, oh, someone must have beaten it. So I went to the more info, and it shows who's played it and who's cleared it. And as of last night, and at that time, a certain amount of people have played it, but I'm the only one with a clear flag.
That's pretty wild to me, because I actually don't think it's that bad of See, I'm starting to learn that I'm a really bad judge of some of this stuff. Or I'm getting better, but I'm not a good judge at first of what is going to be too difficult for some people and what isn't. So I've started like play testing my stuff. But right now I am finally biting the bullet and working on a level in which you kind of have to do things like hurt yourself in moments in order to get small and things like that. I've been watching so many people in the way that they like build certain aspects of their levels, and I'm trying to kind of create one of my own, something new that I haven't seen anybody else do yet. And it is kind of like freeing to be able to say, all right, at this point you have to be small again, so fuck it, you're gonna have to go back and hurt yourself if you need. Like I'm not a fan of that particular tactic, but I am learning with it anyway.
But yeah, and I will say this also about Super Meat Toad, or however you're supposed to. It's like 4 U's. I don't know how I'm supposed to do that.
It's because you've never played Super Meat Boy, have you? Because you would know exactly how to say
I've
it.
played Super Meat Boy.
The opening screen of Super Meat Boy is Super Meat Boy.
You know that I don't. I just said that I don't play with audio. I think that I just said that, so I've never heard that. Now I'm interested. Color me interested. But I beat it the way that like I found to beat it, but then I also beat it your intended way. So I want you to know that as well.
I'm curious what the change is. We'll have to go take a look at it.
We'll talk about it off mic because I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But if you think you have found Siegen's secret path through Super Meat Toad, you can get him on Twitter at Siege versus the World.
Yeah, and if you want to brag to Devin after you finally beat one of his scores on my levels, you can find him at Devin D. Decker.
All right. So until next time, let's pass it over to our friend down under. William, please bring us home.
Thank you for listening to the Say Report with your host Devin Decker and Siegen Selwick. Please follow the guys on Twitter and Facebook by searching for The Say Report, and you can always subscribe on your podcast channel so this is delivered straight to you and you can enjoy it every week. With apologies to your mother, we'll see you next time.